Hey, have you seen that Amsterdam was the 15th best place to live last year?
Seriously? I've been there recently and it's a pretty interesting city, but what makes it special?
Well, they have been setting up an impressive place branding campaign these last years.
Nice. But what exactly is place branding?
Hello everyone. Marsha, Maxime, eBay and I welcome you to our presentation on place branding and the role of identity. Before we start with our presentation, we would like to get to our purpose with this presentation, why it is an important topic and what we personally connect with it. Place branding is an approach, whether it's to define a city, a country, a community or a destination, to really articulate what the unique strategic positioning of that place is and differentiating characteristics versus all of its competing cities, countries, and destinations all around the world. A strong place brand helps a place, whether it's a city or a country, to compete in the global marketplace today because the movement of our ideas, capitals, and people is increasingly fluid and businesses or visitors can go wherever they want. So ultimately, it comes down to differentiating unique characteristics of a place and accentuating that because it becomes important to attract that investment, those people, that capital, those ideas, and those visitors. Standing out place branding strategies strengthens community sense of place, and the reason that this is important is that it creates alignment between businesses, community, and visitors. Too often a destination or a community is looking for a growth market or growth industry or capitalizing on its economic strength and characteristics. The place branding strategy will help to bring everything into focus. Traditionally, a place brand was defined by geography, environment, and the industries that environment blended itself to. But today, it's really much more about the software of a place, defined by the experiences, the culture, the people that are living within that place and the characteristics and attributes they blend to the environment. New York is a great example of a place brand. Everyone understands the hardware of the place and the buildings and the infrastructure and the industry and the business that happens in New York. But that's not what they all talk about. They talk about energy, what they can feel within the place, the software of a place brand, the experiences, energy, and it's the sound, the feeling, no matter who you are, investor, member, or community of a community or investor. For each of us, place branding played a certain role in our lives. It was never about going to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower or the Sacré-Cœur, for example, but much more for the feeling that we seeked when being in Paris. Modernity, classiness, street music, whatever we felt. To present to you the topic of place branding, we prepared for you the following table of content. First, the theoretical input, followed by the case study of Amsterdam, and we're going to end our presentation with the conclusion. After this short introduction, we should start getting into the detail, right? What is place branding? How is it being defined, and where does it come from? It may exist way longer than what you might think.
Indeed, nations practiced place branding long before the appearance of the term. Cities and nations around the world are taking measures such as increasing investment and forming campaigns in the hope of improving their image. To understand the validity of such actions and decisions of place branding, it is important to understand the three main perspectives that surround the question of whether nations can be branded: the absolutists, the moderates, and the royalists. Absolutists believe that a nation is no different from a product that can be branded. They see the nation as a brand that has similar characteristics and rules to branded products and therefore functions like a business. Nations create visions and missions to construct identities and images, just as a company does, with itself and its products for its consumers. These identities and images can also change when a new regime takes over, and nations are subjected to change. On the contrary, the royalists believe that nations cannot be commercialized because of a certain dignity that they possess as opposed to products. So much so that nations are even considered above the individual. Therefore, it would be wrong to believe that branding strategies can be applied to nations because changes in a nation require higher physiological foundations than changes in products. Moderates share the absolutist view that nations cannot be branded. However, they stand between the two perspectives because they believe that globalization requires nations to focus on enhancing their image if they are to improve and expand international and transnational relations. They emphasize the role of government, which is to lead the nation to prosperity by adding value to its industries and branding through branding techniques.
Okay, absolutists, royalists, moderates, but how does the determination of a place brand work?
Since Moilanen and Reinisto came up with the 5 stages model. It starts with the forming of an organization to start the place branding campaign. After that, research needs to be done regarding the objectives and values. With that, an identity can then be formed. At stage 4, a plan is created, and then at stage 5, it can be implemented. Kavaratsis and Hedge present a 4 stages model. It starts with the formulation of a vision for the place, which is then open for consultation with the people responsible for branding, the local population, and all potential partners. This leads to relevant actions that will concern one or more functional infrastructural projects, landscape interventions, and incentives or opportunities for several audiences. Finally, these actions should be communicated. But as you can see, after each step, the vision and strategy can be worked on and adjusted.
Moilanen and Reinistio mentioned something about an identity, which is formed in step 3. Kavaratsis and Hatch mention a shared vision, which is constantly built on after every of the 4 steps. So what is this identity or the vision? And is it something short-term, or does it has to evolve over the long term?
To define what's a place identity, we can say that it refers to the unique distinctive characteristics and meanings that exist in a place and its culture at a given point in time. To discover these characteristics and meanings, we can conduct group sessions with key stakeholders, such as public actors or representatives of private sectors, study the collective memory by reading historical documents or guiding interviews with academics, and lastly, find out what is the perceived identity with residents' perception survey can also be useful. But is identity something that has to evolve over time, or can it be specifically formed for a campaign? Kavaratsis suggests that identity is developed over the long term as a culture. On the other hand, Moilanen and Reinisto suggest that identity can be formed in the short term as a communication tool. From a history The image is also an important component of branding. It refers to the total sets of impressions that a visitor has of a particular place. It is related to the reputation of a place. To find out how people perceive a city, we can adopt a quantitative approach and conduct survey to measure the numbers of times a certain attributes have been cited. A more qualitative approach can also be adopted through interviews with residents and non-residents to find out an attitude towards the place. For example, a quality perception or a feeling of satisfaction. Finally, we can study what is actually said about the place in the media, text, or pictures. Anholt introduced the term competitive identity to connect the term identity with place branding. A clear communicative engagement is necessary for a place to engage with the outside world in a clear, coordinated and communicative way. A sustained and current innovation means that a competitive identity is shaped by a clear and attractive pattern of development. The brand image and brand equity are factors that aren't under direct control of the owner of the brand. These are anyway critical factors regarding a competitive identity. Brand purpose is also important to reach a competitive identity. A common strategic vision within the team is primordial. As you can see pictured, at a national level, the competitive identity of a place is the combination of images related to branding including export brands, foreign and domestic policy, people, culture and heritage, investment and immigration, and tourism.
And finally, what is the goal of it? Well, apparently there are many objectives of place branding. It can be used to attract people like you and me to visit the place, or it can also be used to stimulate inward investment. It can help local business and brands and make them more competitive. This then leads to global competition and boost their exports. But it doesn't stop here. It can also be used for talent acquisition, enhance nation buildings, and even increase international political influence. But it is easier to understand if we look at a case. That was plenty of theory. To portray the place branding objectives, let's move on to our case of Amsterdam. Why Amsterdam? Well, why not? No, just kidding. Amsterdam seemed to be the perfect target to portray a place branding case study, as the entire city has its own marketing company and it puts a big focus on it. In fact, Amsterdam would probably not even be the Amsterdam we see or think of if it wouldn't have been rescued by its place branding marketing strategy. We would like to introduce to you
Amsterdam, the name given to the place branding campaign, which Amsterdam used to redefine the image of the city. But why did they want to do such a thing? When you ask people what is the one word they will apply when thinking about Amsterdam, bicycles, tulips, canals are words that come equally with drugs and prostitution. That is why they needed to redefine and reposition Amsterdam in people's minds and decided to launch this new marketing campaign in 2004. To understand a bit more how Amsterdam came to this decision, let's look at their history from a place branding point of view. In the 17th century, Amsterdam benefited from the golden age of the Netherlands and was seen as a trading city. It therefore became an appealing place, and particularly for prosperous European migrants. At the end of the 60s, a second image of Amsterdam, born out of its tradition of openness and tolerance, started to dominate. In the 1980s, Amsterdam's international success started to suffer from the increase in competitivity from cities in Spain and Eastern Europe, such as Brussels and Barcelona. All these factors brought Amsterdam to launch a new marketing campaign in 2004.
And how did they proceed?
As Kavaratis mentioned, partnership, shared vision and involvement of stakeholders is key for an effective place branding. That is why Amsterdam has made sure that the stakeholders, such as the people, government and industry, work together with the same vision. But why do they stand for? Their strategy identified key factors to promote: the identity, which is visually represented by their distinct logo and verbally represented by realistic goals and core values, such as creativity or innovation. Their united organization and one platform, the planes, trains, automobiles, ships that compose their infrastructure, and of course, their tourism attractiveness, strengthened by their museums, architecture, and walkability. When it comes to the last stage, the communication, Amsterdam promotes and improves its reputation with guidebooks, social media, or a blog for international residents. They are also preparing a chatbot called Guchem that will be able to directly communicate with tourists and propose activities suited to their needs. At a more international level, the city benefits from a position in the famous Monocle newspaper that establish a top 25 places to live every year.
Wow, that is so interesting. So it seems like identity is very important, but what is their identity actually?
Competitive identity is the combination of images related to nation branding, and we already discussed before. Now on the example of Amsterdam, you could imagine the hexagon as following. For governance, Amsterdam's politics are liberal. This attracts different-minded people and is also regarded as futuristic worldwide. For exports, you can imagine typical exports like flour or vegetables associated with the Netherlands and therefore with the capital Amsterdam, but even machinery including computers or mineral fuels including oil are typical export products. For tourism, Amsterdam as the capital of the Netherlands and its characteristic canals, the old city town, the young vibe, or the city, or the legal smoking of marijuana attract people worldwide. For investment and integration, many big companies are located in Amsterdam or the Netherlands, for example, ING, Unilever, Philips, or Heineken. For cultural heritage, Vincent van Gogh, Rembrandt, or the persecution of Jews and the fate of Anne Frank are well known. Or, for people, Amsterdam is known for its young, diverse population. People work here, people study here, and people visit the city. Through practicing a clear communicative engagement, building a brand image, a purpose, a brand equity, even through the constant build-up of sustained and coherent innovation, Amsterdam achieved competitive identity over time. It is important to understand the concept of identity and image and their role in place branding, because national identity impacts people's perceived image of the nation, which can affect national prosperity. Brand identity is defined as the essence of the brand that is created by the corporation. It is made up of characteristics that determine who or what a product is and develops over time. Brand image, on the other hand, is the perception of general cognitive impression of a nation that is created from the consumer's minds. Feelings and beliefs are stimulated by associations between products and the real world. Therefore, the image is not directly controllable by the corporation. Here is more short-term.
If Amsterdam's identity is built over the long term and the logo represents a classical marketing activity. So unlike identity, which we have learned is built in the long term, this is specifically designed for this campaign. However, the letters attract many visitors and are the face of the campaign. This begs the question, how important is marketing actually?
The I Amsterdam logo only works because it is the last part of the entire structure. It builds on top of everything else. The vision and strategy lay the foundation for the entire place branding campaign. With that, a competitive identity was able to evolve, and with people accepting the new values, it was able to communicate around the world. The logo is just one tool, one marketing activity to spread the word about the new Amsterdam. Just as Govers found out in his research, its success is based on the fact that it represents something that people are already proud of or engaged with.
So from today we have learned 3 different things. First, classical marketing activities only work for nations which have a strong competitive identity. Secondly, the competitive identity is something which has to evolve over time and accepted by the citizens. And lastly, authentic place branding has to be established by itself without external interference. This is the end of our presentation on place branding. Thank you for your attention. We welcome you to challenge our findings in class in a discussion.